Let's get back to verse 6. 5. Over the sun, it has not seen. Even the sun it has not seen. And it has more rest than that man. Well, this is interesting. So we got darkness covering this life. And there's something that even has more rest. If you turn to 2 Corinthians 4, 3-6, this is kind of interesting. And even if our gospel, so again, 2 Corinthians 4, 3-6. And even if our gospel is veiled, darkness? Was the gospel veiled to Paul up until the point of Damascus? Yeah, it was. It is veiled to those who are perishing. Everybody knows that there is a resurrected life and there is a second death. If we don't get in to the true gospel message, if we're not a part of this, and we don't have the sanctifying blood that's bought us, there is a reality to this. And there is a physical death. Man is appointed to die but once, and there is a spiritual death. In this case, the God of this world has blinded their minds. Of the who? Unbelievers. This is interesting. So a believer in the Creator, a believer that, you see, this is the important thing. We need to really be looking, if somebody is a believer, then witness the true gospel to them. Because this one is actually pointing to those who could care less. They don't believe. And you could be casting your pearls before swine in that case. Starts to go against all the door knocking, doesn't it? And standing on the street corner saying the end is near to a bunch of people who really could care less. But if somebody truly has a belief in their heart, no matter where they are on the riverbanks, no matter where they are on the journey of their life, there's something here that's incredible. That the Ruach could open their eyes and a veil could start to see the truth of this. Now, if we see this, okay, so the unbelievers, to keep them from seeing the light of the gospel. So do you think Hasatan might go after this, confuse what the gospel is? Absolutely. So we've got to make sure that we have an understanding of what the true gospel is. Of the glory of Messiah. Not you get your butt saved from an eternal torture chamber master. See, the true gospel is going to point to the glory of who? Messiah. It is all about him. Now, to him, it might be all about us. But from our perspective, right? He's looking for a bride that's really interested in her groom. It's always there. I want to know. You've been given this task, this grievous task, according to the Goheleth, this thing called life. Who is the image of Elohim, your creator. For what we proclaim is not ourselves. If you just didn't get it. What does that say? You don't proclaim yourself. But Yeshua Messiah as master, with ourselves as your servants for Yeshua's sake. For Elohim who said, let light shine out of darkness. What did Yeshua say? I am the light. So this is the thing. If this truth starts to come in, the true gospel starts to come in, the darkness will scatter. As shone in our hearts. Heart circumcision. Not I get to win a whole bunch of theological arguments. See, if we don't get to the why of all of this, we could start getting ourselves in trouble. We could actually miss some interesting stuff here. So we want to get right down into that sod level, that revelational level. To give the light of the knowledge of the glory of Elohim in the face of Yeshua Messiah. So this is really, really interesting. So is knowledge the pursuit here, or is knowledge the outcome? It's the outcome. There is no way that you can seek, any of us could seek, our Messiah and not have knowledge as an outcome. But do you think it's possible we could try and pursue knowledge and not have intimacy of Messiah? Yeah. In fact, I think we are seeing that in the religious people of the day. And I think we could see it today. Okay. We'll keep going here. All right, so picking up in verse 6. And though he lives 1,000 years, twice over, yet he shall not see goodness. Do not all go to one place. What's that one place? What place do we all go to? Sheol. We're all going. So, this is interesting. We could live our whole life, perhaps, with even the blessing of Torah, maybe even the knowledge of Torah, but still not understand the goodness of the whole plan of redemption and our Messiah. I'm just proposing, is this possible that this can occur? I think that we're seeing the Koheleth here, the author here, actually suggesting that. Picking up in verse 7. All the labor of a man is for his mouth, and yet the appetite is not satisfied. For what advantage has the wise over the fool? What advantage does the poor who knows how to walk before the living? This is interesting where we get into, and if you can turn to Matthew 5:6. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they shall be satisfied. Now here's what's interesting. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for good theology. Blessed are those who hunger for knowledge. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for their own version of Him. What is righteousness? Yeah, what defines righteousness according to the Father, Torah? Hunger and thirst for it. Isn't that interesting? Man, you mean He's directing us, but there's a statement here, and by the way, I'm reading from the New Testament. Chapter 5, verse 6. So He's saying, blessed are those who hunger and thirst for my Torah? And this is in the New Testament? Yeah, because it's Yeshua. It literally is Him. It's all over this. If we start to have our veil lifted and we can start to have eyes to what? And ears to? It's there. Okay, we'll keep going here. In 9. What the eye see is better than what the desire goes after. That too is vapor and feeding on the wind. And this is interesting. It's like he takes a pause here and says, by the way, I just want to remind you along the way while you're in the States. Anybody ever heard, a bird in the hand's better than two in the bush? It's kind of a saying here that we use. Even we spoke about earlier, how we can take for granted sometimes what we already have. Until we lose it, we don't. Do we actually really appreciate what the Father's given us and what He's doing to date in our lives? I want to mention to you something here of where and what attacks this, okay? If you can turn to 1 John 2, 15 to 17. Lust of the flesh, lust of the eyes, the pride of life. So 1 John chapter 2, starting at verse 15. Do not love the world or the things in the world. If anyone loves the world, the love of the Father is not in him. Does anybody think that's sobering? So we want to learn that our life is a vapor, don't we? Because if I don't think my life's a vapor, what might I start to love? My career? How about the house, the car, the bank account? In fact, that could start to lead to coveting what someone else has that I maybe don't. You see, this doesn't say you can't enjoy anything. It's saying love. Idolatry. You are putting this literally above me. And if you do, these things are going to start to determine how you view me, maybe even shape your image of me. This starts to get interesting. This is clear, though. If that happens to you in your life or whatever particular part of your life, the love of the Father is not there. I don't know about you, but I'm seeing a religious system right now in the world today consumed. I don't even know how to tell it apart anymore from the world. How did that happen if there was a true love for him and his ways and to be set apart? Why can't I just see the fruit of this in the so-called believing world? I have to ask that question. And then I'm told by Scripture, by the way, my love's not in them. What are we told about in the end times? That the love of many will grow cold. Wow. For all that is in the world, the desires of the flesh and the desires of the eyes and the pride of life is not from the Father, but from the world, the byproduct of a fallen state. Now this is interesting. Did we now see these three things fall into place even with the original fallen man? Was Eve tempted in the flesh? And she was deceived in that way. Did she like what she saw? And did she realize that it was good to make her wise? The fiery darts of the enemy. There is only three of them, by the way. Now, it might manifest itself in all manner of things that can go on in the world. But you will get, if you get to the root of these things, you're going to be seeing what the adversary is allowed to play with in your life. And it will always be hitting your flesh, what your eyes will covet or desire, and how that feeds your pride. Always. So whenever you're being led from your relationship, or we're being led away from our relationship with Elohim, away from an understanding and an intimacy with our Messiah, you're always going to find one of these three things behind it. It's not that complicated, really, now is it? Once you just start to understand, whoa, okay. Now that might look different in everyone's life, but it will all relate to these three things. He's got three darts. That's it. So when you hear all these spiritual warfare messages and, the spirit of, I don't know, the spirit of loving cars has attacked you or something like that. I mean, we're naming everything that's ultimately the flesh. Right? Do you see what we're doing? We're abdicating responsibility on these things to who? Our mythical understanding of the adversary. And if you keep doing that, who's not going to take responsibility for in their own lives? Us. Wow. If we keep going in this, we're going to make Hasatan exactly where he claimed to be. I will be like. We're going to start to make him Elohim. And we're not going to, in the process of doing that, we're going to miss something. I'm going to challenge you who's in control here when it comes to self-sovereignty. I'll just continue reading it through to verse 17. For all that is in the world, the desires of the flesh, the desires of the eyes, the pride of life, is not from the Father, but is from the world. And the world is passing away, along with its desires. But whoever does the will of Yah abides forever. Who came to do the will of the Father? Yeshua did. We're getting a disconnect here in modern teaching, aren't we? Because apparently this is in the New Testament and it's saying the will of the Father. Well, where's the will of the Father recorded? You will not be able to get through what we call our New Testament, without actually seeing this once your eyes start to get open. Now, we have many brothers and sisters, family, whatever, who don't see this yet. So let's get self-righteous and keep smashing them. Because you've always seen this, haven't you? You see, you're allowed the mercy of Elohim, but they're not. Let's be very, very careful that this message is for believers. And wherever the state of a believer may be, we are not charged to tell somebody what they can and cannot do, to convert anybody, to do all this kind of stuff. We are there to give an account for the hope that was within us, whatever he's unveiling, what we see and what we understand. And you're either going to get lashed or you're going to get hugged for that. But it's not up to you, and their reaction is not a judgment against you if we are pleasing in the Father's eyes. You see, do we want to be a pleasing vessel that somebody could see us as a light? Right? Because we are all here today starting to go on this journey and understanding that these things actually are still matter. And they're of the Father. And he gave us the mercy to get here, right? And somebody else maybe saw the light of Yeshua, and somebody else, and somebody else, and somebody else. So we need to be actually focused on teshuvah, repentance, so that we can start to become a light to others, right? Do you see how that works? Or we can go around and be self-righteous, like the Pharisees. Which one are we going to be? Because it's hard sometimes when you're getting lashed not to defend yourself, isn't it? And somebody's making some statement or accusation against you, or doesn't understand your journey, or doesn't even understand the word themselves, but they got a wonderful understanding, so-called, of your walk. But they don't walk with you. They don't fellowship with you. They don't but they're more than willing to give their assessment of you, aren't they? That's democracy. That's right. However, we're told that as that happens, that's not our excuse to all of a sudden take what? His place on the throne. Okay? And we'll be finishing up there in that space. Just remember that. Okay, so, continuing on. Verse 10. Whatever shall be has already been named, and it is known that he is the son of Adam, or man, and he is unable to contend with him who is mightier than he. Who's mightier than us? The Creator. Yah is in control. Here is where our self-sovereignty is really going to come into play, and what this whole chapter has really been all about. We seek the wisdom. The discerning sets his face towards wisdom. Does anybody know that wisdom is given as a description of the Holy Spirit, the Ruach? But the eyes of a fool are on the ends of the earth. Wow. So we can either set our mind towards earthly things, or we can set our mind to understanding the weightier matters. And we can help each other in that journey, or we can, be islands unto ourselves, think it doesn't matter, whatever. And keep reading here. The self-sovereignty of this, just in verse 10, I just to really get this point across here. If we sit, you're on the throne of your life. We've talked about this. If you try to justify that you are not, you could be in real danger. Does anybody know that if an alcoholic's trying to overcome, do you think they overcome when they keep saying, I'm not an alcoholic? I'm not an alcoholic. What is actually one of the things we have to actually acknowledge about ourselves in order to overcome anything? Admit it. You see, if we don't admit that we're actually on the throne of our lives, and I can put Satan there with the horns and the red pajamas, or I can put him there. That's the reason why everything goes wrong. It has nothing to do with me. You see, if I can do that, if I can abdicate it to a third party, not only am I going to elevate that thing to an Elohim, but I'm going to not live with the blindness that it's actually me on the throne. Who really is in control when it comes to our lives? Because you know what happens when we try and have control of our lives, right? Remember this, I'm the author of good and evil. All of a sudden he allows chastising and testing to come into your life just to remind you that you may not be Elohim. See, these things are ultimately a blessing. So do you mean even the description of him being the author of good and evil is actually for us to understand as a blessing? Is it possible that we need chastising? Is it possible we need a reminder that maybe we're sitting somewhere we shouldn't be? And if I start losing control of my life and I am not submitted to the Father in all of this, what could this create in my life? We've gone over this. What happens if I start to lose control of my surroundings and I'm the one sitting on the throne of my life? What could I start experiencing? Anxiety. The only thing that the author of this said, this is the thing that there's not a time for. This is the thing I don't want in your life. is anxiety. So if we don't get off the throne of our lives, we might experience in our life what? Anxiety. Not shalom. So if we're experiencing anxiety in our life and everything else, this is where we learn that submission, to give it to the Father, to learn to do that. One of the hardest things I know on my journey was learning to trust the Father. Because I trust Elohim Curtis. And then he gets reminded that I shouldn't have. But I don't know what it is. I keep trusting this idiot. I get back on that and I'll do it again. Or something like that, I think I need to learn how to start to trust the Father. So he's slowly teaching me with the testing and the chastising and the edification and the building, all of these things, that, wait a minute, maybe it's better that I keep relinquishing my throne to the one who should be sitting over my life. But is anybody yet to be reminded over the course of your life that maybe, you're not in control? And that can be a hard time sometimes. And you know what Messiah is saying? When that's happening to your brother or your sister, sharing that burden, because guess what? It's not nice learning that you're not Elohim sometimes. And we can go through some really difficult fires and trials, can't we? Can we love and care for that person? Can we invite that donkey in our house? Can we give that donkey a hug? Can we sit there and actually give them, because I'm actually in a state where I'm able to serve in to that person right now? Because guess what? Your time's coming. What an honor it is to share in someone else's burden, because you're not the one on the hot seat at that point. But boy, isn't it nice that if you're in the true burdens of your life, that there are others around that are not acting in a self-righteous manner, that are not sitting on the thrones, that they're actually walking with you, that they may turn you to Messiah. Isn't that neat? Don't you want to be in that environment when the Father decides I'm going to do a little bit of testing here? Yeah. Safe environment. One of the most wonderful things about what the Father's doing here with our fellowship here in Wellington is you're in safe hands. There are people here that are going to walk with you. And Yeshua in them will be part of the protection of that. We're not alone. I am dealing with people in different parts of the world, and they are saying to me, man, it is so lonely because we can't find people to be with right now as they're being shown these things. Wow, why are we so fortunate? I don't know. In its fullness, the Father knows. All right, let's finish up here. Verse 11. The more words, the more vapor. Gee, I need to take that one on. What is to man the advantage of this? I don't know. It's sobering when I see stuff like that. We need to skip over that one. I don't even know what that's doing in here. Okay, verse 12. For who knows what is good for a man in life? Okay, so we got back to the task. He defines it at the end. We're not making this up. All the days of his vaporous life, his vapor life, which he passes like a shadow. For who declares to man what shall be after him under the sun? And the answer to that question is what? Who declares that? Yeah. Whose judgment seat are we heading for? Messiah's. He declares. In Jacob here, or James 4:13-15. Now come on, you who say, today, tomorrow, we will go into such and such a town and spend a year there and trade and make a profit. We're going to go do some business. We're fine. Who cares what the Creator has to say? I got some things in the world here that are going to be useful to me. You do not know what tomorrow will bring. If you just realize you're not in control, you're not on the throne of your life, you don't have anything to say with any of this right now other than your self-sovereignty making a choice to love him or not. When we really start to get this, especially from what the words of wisdom, and he's saying this as king, man, there's nothing that Solomon lacks. Nothing. Except the one warning he's trying to give us. I can fall into darkness. Wow. So you can lack nothing and still be in darkness. He's sitting here going, what is your life? What is your task? For you are a mist, a vapor that appears for a little time and then vanishes. Does anybody here think they had read Koheleth, 2,000 years ago when this testament was being formed. What do you think they're referencing there? Yeah. The very, very scriptures we're going through. Instead, you ought to say, if Elohim wills, we will live and do this or that. Isn't that neat? So we've got this balancing act, right? Because sometimes it's hard sometimes to know, is that the will of Yahweh or it isn't? Well, I'd suggest to you that you want to be in discipleship, you want to be in the Word, and you want to be in prayer, because we're to understand the will of the Father in our lives. It's a team game. Do you know we're in a safer environment when we're trying to seek? Has anybody enjoyed the fact of fellowship where you're trying to figure out something for your life and having others to be able to feed and counsel into you? Those who have maybe lived a little bit longer in life than you have. Maybe those who have gone through different fires or trials than you have. And they're able to reflect and give you that wisdom or that love or that empathy, that understanding, and actually biblical wisdom. Isn't that a wonderful way to start understanding whether and what you're hearing from the Father? All of it. Or I can go, I thought something, therefore it's God, and then this is what I'm going to do. Do you think because you think something that it's always God? Because if you do, what God do you think that is? Oh, you're hearing from an Elohim, all right. Do you know what its name is? Yours. You might want to check out whether a thought in your mind and attributing that to Elohim really is by actually living in a biblical pattern and seeing whether it tests. Doesn't mean it isn't. Could be. But if we're not, what are we supposed to do? We are to test we are supposed to live in a place that is safer. That we can sort of see, is this lining up with the Word? Is this lining up with the body and the wisdom and stuff it can feed into? Is this a part of it? But we're taking it down to 1/3. And by the way, that would be half a Shavuot. Do you want to celebrate half a Shavuot? We'll get half a message this Shavuot. We want both. Okay. And just finishing up here. Did I finish up there? I did. Okay. So this Bema Seat of Messiah that we're going to one day face, we got a choice. We're going to face it with us sitting on the throne and get a shock of our lives. There's some interesting scriptures around those who are going to experience that. And there'll be those that may be in a place of teshuvah. Let's help each other get the message of the wisdom of Solomon so that we can get off the thrones of our lives, understand the vapor nature of our lives, but know that He still cares about it. He still wants to walk with us, and He still is a part of this task we call life. But just don't forget that it's temporary, but it still means something to Him. And this is ultimately why we even call this all as vanity. I do not like the modern connotation that gives. Because it says that your temporary life, your task, it gives a connotation that it's meaningless. And it isn't. In fact, I'd say it means a lot to Him. And in fact, there's a very serious decision being worked out in our hearts and our minds in this task we call life. I think it's extremely important to Him, albeit temporary. Amen? Okay, let's finish up there and then we'll do a quick Q&A.